Jennifer.
Today is day 8 of the Bible recap. We're in Job chapter 17 through 20. So, start off with the summary. In 17, Job's defending his innocence. He tells God to defend his innocence. He says in verse 3, it says, "You must defend my innocence, O God, since no one else will stand up for me." He's basically kind of putting the blame onto God in the next verse too. He says, "You have closed their minds to understanding." So he's basically telling God, it's your fault that nobody wants to try to comfort me. Nobody wants to hear my side of it. Nobody wants to understand what I'm trying to say. And then Bildad responds in 18. He says, "Do you think we are stupid?" Like he compares themselves to animals. He's like, "Do you think we're like animals?" He's then adding unnecessary guilt to Job. He's making Job's suffering more, and he basically is calling Job wicked because everything that Bildad talks about and lists are wicked, evil things. He says one thing, "Surely the light of the wicked will be snuffed out." That's in verse 5. Then a little bit later down in verse 8, it says, "The wicked walk into a net, they fall into a pit." He thinks Job is just this evil person because of what he's heard. And
no, he's angry too.
He
says, how long before you stop talking? Speak sense if you want us to answer. Like he doesn't. He's done listening.
No, he's mad because he thinks he's calling him stupid. Which
I mean, Job
is but they're also speaking nonsense. They're saying words that have no meaning. They're just empty words because they don't want to hear Job. They know Job. They know how good of a person he was, but they're like, "No,
you obviously
did something. Like, you're just wrong."
Yeah.
19 is where Job, he kind of hits him back. He's like, "I'm done. Like, I'm gonna just let it loose because I'm tired of these people." Job's quite angry now. Like he lays into him, but he's also questioning them too. He's like, "Why are you trying to torture me? You're speaking these things to me, and it's bringing shame on me, or it's bringing shame on to them." He's like, "You're shaming yourself. Like, you should be ashamed of what you're saying to me, because I know I haven't sinned. You think you don't know that I have sinned, but you know how righteous of a person I am."
Yeah.
But Job still keeps his faith towards the end of 19. Like, here's another prediction about Jesus. He says in verse 25, he says, "But as for me, I know that my Redeemer lives, and he will stand upon the earth at last. And after my body has decayed, yet in my body I will see God." Like, that's comforting. Like, especially, he doesn't even know nothing about Jesus. Like, he doesn't know none of that's gonna be down the road for us. Like, he
has that much faith. Like,
yeah.
Even in all of what's happening, he just has that much faith.
Yeah. And 20 is so far. He tries to pass off what he thinks by the Spirit talking through him. He says, and now my spirit prompts me to reply, implying that God's given him some information, just like I believe it was Bildad in the earlier chapters saying, yeah, the Spirit, I heard something tell me to say this.
Yeah. Sums it up.
Yeah, it sums it up.
Yeah, so are we ready for some study questions?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's get out our handy dandy notebook. Okay, so day 8, which is week 2. So that's also exciting to start another week. Number 1 says, describe Job's attitude towards his friends in chapter 17, and then describe Bildad's attitude towards Job in chapter 18. So, Job's attitude towards his friends in chapter 17 is kind of, he's angry, he's fed up, he, is done listening to them.
Yeah, I mean, they're closed-minded. Mm-hmm. Like, they're mocking him, mm-hmm. and not only kind of like rebelling against Job, but they're all like trying to say these bad things about Job that aren't true. And they have no idea if they're true or not, but they're speaking falsely.
Just saying it, yeah.
Like, they're delivering judgment on Job, and they're not God. Yep.
So Job is feeling defeated too.
Yeah.
And then describe Bildad's attitude towards Job. So, I mean, he just feels that Job isn't making sense. He's frustrated, outraged.
Bildad said plainly, be quiet. Like, stop speaking. Be done.
Yeah.
And he wants Job to take his advice, but they're not really giving advice. None of them are. Mm-mm. Like, they're basically just pointing the finger saying you've done something wrong. Pray. Yeah,
you need to admit it.
Job has been crying out to God, which is praying. Yeah. And nothing's being done.
Yeah. Because that he's not admitting that he's done something wrong is what it is that they're trying to tell him to do too. Number 2 says, find a verse in chapter 19 where Job might inadvertently prophesy about Jesus. And how is this prophecy fulfilled? Oh. It's when they're speaking about a sword. 26 or 29.
Okay, so I wrote the same thing down, but in 29 it says, you should fear punishment yourselves, for your attitude deserves punishment. Then you will know that there is indeed a judgment.
Yeah.
I think when we originally read this, it was in the CSB.
Oh, yeah. The CSB, so the different translations can change what it is, because we're reading the NLT right now. But I don't think that the sword saying was in that same part. I think that it was up beforehand, because he said it, because I remember.
Okay, so no, it is because of CSB. Yeah. So I wrote the whole verse down. Oh. So, in 1929, in the CSB translation, it says, be afraid of the sword, because wrath brings punishment by the sword, that you may know there is a judgment. And it references to Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, or Gethsemane, where, like, Peter slashes off the ear of the servant, And Jesus says, you live by the sword, you're going to die by the sword.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I was like, wait a minute.
But also in verses 25 to 26, there's a prophecy about Jesus ruling the earth and walking on the earth.
Yeah, and he says, my Redeemer.
Yeah, he calls him my Redeemer.
Yeah, okay.
So that first one in verse 29, that was referenced CSB. The second one is in NLT. Just so we keep that clear, because we originally wrote our answers down with the CSB, and now we're holding our NLTs right now.
Yes. Well, that's because we changed. Yeah. We found that the NLT was easier to read and understand when going through everything. Especially like with Job.
Yeah. And with our families doing the Bible set, it's just easier for everybody to follow.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, number 3. In chapter 20, verse 3, Zophar claims a spirit guided his words to Job. If you were Job, how would Zophar's words land on you?
I mean, honestly, I would try to listen. I'd probably be a little upset, honestly, because he's still calling me wicked. And
yeah, I said that I would be insulted because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I would be insulted. I mean, I would try to listen up to a point.
Like, I don't know, because...
But you also want to see what God wants you to see.
I mean, yes.
You have to look at it through that God lens. Like, what is God trying to show me?
But if I knew that I didn't do something, and you kept telling me, God told me you did this, I would look at you like, I'm not listening to a word you got to say, because I know I didn't do this. And I know God should know that I didn't do this. So whatever you're saying, whoever's speaking to you, ain't right.
But I feel like that kind of thing would also lead me to, well, then God, why are you doing this to me? Just because you want to do it to me?
Yeah.
That would bring
a whole other set of questions. But would you listen to the person who's telling you, God said this? Like, it would just bring out, I think, a lot more questions.
I don't know. I'm a firm believer in tough love. Like, I might listen. Like, you hurt my feelings a little bit, but I might pick some of what you're saying.
Like constructive criticism.
Yeah. But what they're doing is definitely not constructive.
It's not.
But I'm more open to being criticized in that kind of way. Being even told I'm completely wrong. Like,
don't know what you're talking about, dear.
Mm-hmm. Question 4, because we're going to move on from that.
Number 4 says, do Zophar's accusations toward Job in chapter 20, verses 12 through 29, line up with what we know about Job from chapter 1? Why or why not?
Nope. In chapter 1, even God calls him righteous.
Yeah.
And upright.
Blameless.
Yeah.
Blameless and righteous. Those are God's words.
There's never been another besides Jesus that is blameless. Well, he doesn't say sinless, but blameless.
Yeah, blameless. Blameless and righteous.
Which means, like, he has sin, but he makes the offerings and he atones for his sins.
Yeah. He does his best to keep on that path.
Yeah.
Well, that's all for today's study questions. Now we'll get into our journal. And today's day is day 8. So the things that you loved, learned, and noticed. I have that everyone avoids Job. Still, he has faith in God. He talks about using a sword will end by the sword in chapter 19, verses 28 to 29, which is like Jesus said later. And Job wants everything written down. He says specifically, I want this written down.
Yeah, he wants there to be like a testimony of what has happened.
Yeah, an account of what's going on here. He's like, no, this needs to be written down. And little does he know, it is written down, and we have no
That
idea
brings me to
who wrote it.
I'm gonna say that brings me to who wrote it.
We have no idea who wrote
like,
it.
who did he ask? Was it just God wrote it down for him, and eventually was like, "Here you go. I gave you an account for everything.
Yeah.
From start of how this happened to you to the end."
Okay, so the questions or things that you want to research, I just have, why don't we know who wrote Job? Like, why don't we know this?
Yeah, I mean, it could be like, since Satan and God taught, no person is gonna know that unless God told them, or it was God personally or one of his angels that wrote it for Job.
Yeah.
Because Job was wanting it to be written.
Yeah.
And made an account of, so it's possible that God himself made this account for Job to show him what happened to cause his suffering from the beginning. That it was nothing he did, but that God wanted to show how powerful faith is.
Yeah.
Or how show Satan how powerful faith is.
It is what it is.
I am that I am.
Yeah.
Like, the Bible's not up for, it's not debate or any, like, there's just places in the Bible that questions can't be answered because
it's just
God didn't make it so. Yeah. He said, "This is it. Take it for how it is."
Yeah, he's just telling you, this is what it is.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. Okay.
Believe it or not, up to you.
God shot. I have that God is bigger than everything. He is in control. His plan will happen on his time. So
that is true. Everything is his time. We can't make him do anything.
I think I saw a post, and I finally figured out it's Isaiah chapter 60, verse 22. It's, when the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen. But I know that verse. I just don't know. I didn't know where it came from. So now I know. Still haven't read that, but I know where it is. Our little quote down here at the bottom says, I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the last he will stand upon the earth. Job chapter 19, verses 25.
Amen.
So that pretty much wraps it up for day 8. Mm-hmm. We are just starting week 2, and we are halfway through Job. So that's exciting.
Thank y'all for coming by. We're the Brakefields, and this is our journey to building unbreakable faith. We'll see you next time.